Hello and welcome to the Film Club, the 5-Minute Film Club, and today I'm starting yet another series rewatch with my look at every single James Bond film leading up to, at the moment, October's release of No Time to Die. Dr. No was released in 1962 and was directed by Terence Young and is the first film outing of Ian Fleming's creation, the secret agent 007 James Bond. In this first adventure, Bond is sent out to Jamaica by British intelligence to follow up on the disappearance of another British agent, and while there he uncovers a dastardly plot by the villainous Dr. No, a scientist with metal hands. Bond, along with Honey Rider, played by Ursula Andress, a poor rock-hunting beauty, together they must bring down Dr. No before he and the shadowy organisation he works for, Spectre, can unleash their disruption on the world. Dr. No may be the first big screen outing for Bond, but it is not the first novel. James Bond first appeared in the 1953 novel Casino Royale, and even though the books were extremely popular throughout the 1950s, there wasn't much interest in making a film version. Film producer Harry Saltzman bought the rights to the character, but didn't really go much further until Albert R. Broccoli, or Cubby Broccoli as he is known, tried to buy them from him. Instead of selling them, Saltzman and Cubby Broccoli went into partnership to finally bring James Bond to the screen. The studio United Artists set the budget for the film at $1 million, a relatively small sum for what the production team needed to create, and this is where I think the film really shines. Aside from Terence Young's wonderful location shooting and Sean Connery's brilliantly swaggering performance, it is the production design by Ken Adam and his team that wins over everything else for me. On a tiny budget, he managed to create some of the best sets in cinema and influenced a whole host of other films. What struck me about sitting down and watching this film again after probably about 15 years since the last time I watched it, I didn't think that there were that many Bond moments in there, but the classic Bond formula is here. You get the moment with Bond throwing his hat onto the hat stand, and also the opening title sequence, which is very 60s. Also you get one-liners that supposedly were worked on by Sean Connery and Terence Young. They were kind of off script. Some of them really work, but there's others that are just a bit cringy.
I think they were on their way to a funeral.
And then of course this film has the introduction to James Bond. Filling the shoes of 007 is Scott, Sean Connery, a relatively fresh face for the screen. Originally people like Cary Grant and David Niven were considered, but ultimately they wanted someone who was new. Although rather rough around the edges and not like the character of the novels, Sean Connery's Bond is the one to rank against all others. Connery as Bond has a mesmeric quality. He is both suave and sophisticated and then dangerous. His introduction is slowly teased. We get a little bit of his cufflink, we get a cigarette lighter, we get his hand taking the cards, and then finally we get the character reveal with that immortal line.
Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
You can see this way of introducing a character repeated again and again, but probably most famously in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, the majority of the music for this film is a bit much. There's a particular moment when James Bond kills a spider, and every time he hits the shoe down on the floor, well, this happens. I mean, it's just like the composer shouting at you. It's a bit much, but we do get the James Bond theme. Even though Monty Norman wrote the theme, it is what John Barry does with it that makes it so great and memorable. The James Bond theme does exactly what it's meant to, and that's encapsulate everything about the character of Bond, with all his contradictions and mysteries. It's at times harsh, and then backs off into something softer. It's a fabulous piece of music. With all that being said, one thing that Dr. No lacks for me is plot. The first hour or so, with the introduction of Bond and his investigation in Jamaica, they're really great. I really enjoy watching them. But the second that we get to Crab Key and then this out of nowhere introduction of Honey Rider, I completely shut off. Ursula Andress as Honey Rider is essentially the first Bond girl. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter whether she's in the film or not. If you took her out, everything would still happen. My only thing is that the second that she arrives, Quarrel, he dies. Bond can only have one person next to him at any one time, and if it's a choice between a skipper of a boat who's helped him through the entire film and somebody just in a bikini looking for shells is going to be the bikini-clad lady every single time.
We had an encyclopedia. I started at A when I was 8 and now I've reached T.
Watching this now, I kept thinking, now Honey Rider, now she's connected to Dr. No. I bet she's some kind of, secret spy that's been sent out to lure Bond in. And no, she's not. She is just somebody who's stumbled onto Crab Key to collect seashells to sell on the seashore. Dr. No is a great starting point. None of my quibbles seem to matter to audiences back in the early 60s, as it was a huge hit in Britain and across the pond. From Russia with Love was released just a year later in 1963. For more about that film's very troubled production, please join me next week for my review of it. But until then, please let me know your thoughts about Dr. No in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much. Goodbye.